Canadian media has dropped the ball so hard that the most influential conversation so far of 2025 has taken place on the American network Daily Wired. Yes, this is the conversation between Dr. Jordan Peterson and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre. Ladies and gents, welcome back. Canada is in a transition period. Actually, the world is in a transition period. We're waiting for Donald Trump to take his rightful seat as president of the United States of America. That's going to happen this month. But Canada has not yet moved on, but Canadians are quite ready for this. Most Canadians asking for an election. We're being stalled out by, as we all know, Jagmeet Singh and his pension. But in the meantime, Canadians are moving on, and we're actually discussing what's going to happen when Justin Trudeau is no longer in power. Now, if you look at the media, you go to the media and what they've been discussing, we can see here Trudeau has appeared on CBC's Canadian comedy show, which garnered about 93,000 views in 2 days. Notable spike considering the program typically averages about 25,000 views. Yeah, that's right. For the American audience out there, if that sounds small, well, it's small. It's small. We are a tiny demographic, but people are really largely, they've lost interest in what the CBC puts out. Now, Jordan Peterson, by contrast, interviewed Pierre Poilievre on his YouTube channel, reaching 227,000 views in just 5 hours. And I believe at the time of this recording, it's at about 630,000 views, somewhere in that ballpark. It probably hit 1 million by the time you're watching this, if you're watching this early. Now, a lot of people wanted to do commentary on the CBC interview with the Prime Minister. It is by all means, it was paid for by tax dollars, and it was distributed out there on those tax dollars. But CBC has become quite litigious when it comes to their content out there. Wyatt Claypool noting that he's now having to submit a dispute of 22 minutes trying to copyright claim his video because he talked about the interview with Justin Trudeau. That's right. They've been going out and they've been taking down people's content. Well, not taking down, but collecting the revenue from, YouTubers that are out there, commenting on this stuff. That's insane. And it's meant to deliberately dissuade people from responding to their content or stealing their creators' revenue for fair use of their content in commentary videos. But hey, that's par for the course for the propaganda outlet that we all know as the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. Now, again, by contrast, we have independent media in the United States, Daily Wired, putting out this interview with Jordan Peterson and Pierre Poilievre as they discuss Canada's economy, immigration, and housing. This is an article by the Western Standard. Links in the description down below for everything that I put in this video today. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre spent most of his time during the interview with Jordan Peterson talking about the lagging Canadian economy and mounting challenges facing Canadian workers and businesses. Pierre Poilievre told Peterson that Canadian workers receive roughly $15,000 in business investment compared to $28,000 for their American counterparts. They earn just 55 cents for every dollar their American counterparts make. And another point that he makes in the video is that their dollars go further once they've earned that money. They can buy more housing with that. The groceries are much cheaper in the United States. And this has been a real brain drain on Canada. It's enticing some of our top talent to leave the country and move to the United States for, for what you would understand as pretty good reason for most people out there. Now, I'm going to get into some of the clips. Now, the entirety of the video, if you want to watch it, link in the description down below. Go watch it at Daily Wired. But Jordan Peterson putting this one out there. It's a pleasure and a privilege, sir. Good luck to you after Justin Trudeau. I call all Canadians will need that luck. Now, here's the trailer for the video.
So you take the total business investment of the United States divided by the total number of workers in America, it's 28 grand. In Canada, it's 15 grand. The Canadian worker gets about 55 cents for every dollar of his American, and they're both measured in USD. In Vancouver, more money goes to bureaucrats than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who build the place. And to add insult to injury, tradespeople who build homes can't afford to live in them. Why is it that we're still importing oil when we've got the world's third biggest supply? Why is it we can't export our natural gas?
I think that was perhaps the single stupidest thing I ever heard a politician say. Your federal government spent $6,000 of your family's money going over their budget.
They've squeezed the taxpayer out of every last dime, and they're still $62 billion short.
It's worse than that, because I suspect that the true picture is a lot more dismal than we know. Okay, so that's going to be dumped on you sometime in the next year.
They get the party, I get the hangover.
8 years from now, what does it look like?
8 years from now, what does it look like? That's great question. And I thought it was a really fantastic interview. I want to recommend everyone go listen to it in its entirety. Go watch it over on the Daily Wired. Again, link in the description down below. Now, if you've been following the channel for some time, you're going to know that I'm not the type to pull out the pom-poms and start cheerleading for any politicians. But I do want to say that Pierre Poilievre did put out a great message for Canada in this video. Now, there's going to be a few points that I want to address. Something I've been talking about for a good amount of time on this channel is inflation and how it's a hidden tax. Pierre Poilievre actually, and most politicians don't do this, address this directly, that inflation is a tax, and not only is it a tax, it's taxation without representation, and he puts this forward in this interview.
And so what we have as a model in Canada is we have artificial scarcity imposed by a very heavy and restrictive state, confiscatory state, so that suppresses production. Mm-hmm. But in order to allow for consumption, we print money and borrow money, and then flood the economy with that money.
Okay, so that's another problem. So that's the inflationary problem.
Yes.
Now, the problem with inflation, there's many problems with inflation, but one of them is that it particularly punishes people who are thrifty and who save.
Yes.
Right. So inflation punishes the people who forego gratification to invest in the future.
That's right.
Right, so that's a very bad idea.
It's a horrible, inflation is the single most immoral tax for so many reasons. One, it takes from savers and people who are trying to be responsible, thus making it impossible to be responsible. Right. Because you will, if you refuse to play the inflation game of borrowing money to buy things you can't afford, someone else inevitably will, and you won't be able to afford anything. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you ultimately have to act responsibly. It's like Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do with your money in times of inflation? He said, spend it.
Right.
Like the first thing you want to do when inflation is out of control.
And that's exactly what's been happening with the economy. And it's created asset bubbles. People are putting their money into assets because they can't put their money into savings accounts. When the interest that you'll make on a savings account is less than the inflation, you're losing money. You're losing the hard-earned dollars that you've made nominally. Like nominally, it'll stay the same, but you're going to lose all of the value in that money. And that's why people have been hedging their bets with things like, precious metals. And I've been encouraging people to get over and invest in some precious metals. If you have savings, why would you let the government just tax the value of your savings? This is something I've been pushing forward. So you can pause the screen, hit that QR code, and go talk to our friends over at New World Precious Metals over there. Now let's get into some of the other commentary that was happening in this interview. Now Bret Sears put this out there. Pierre Poilievre discussing immigration. If he's going to be the next PM, I think it's important to know his thoughts on this. He says we have to slow down the numbers and the fraud with the international students and temporary foreign workers and get back to the best system in the world like we had before Trudeau. He also says immigrants can bring their traditions and cultures, but we need to leave their foreign conflicts at the door. Great concepts. This is all stuff that Canadians have been talking about. Do you think this is a good plan for immigration in Canada? This, of course, Just a brief summary of what he said. Watch his full answer here. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of it.
Well, Canada historically had a very effective
We had the
immigration
best.
policy.
We just have to
right?
get back to the best system in the world, which we had for 150 years. Even in the United States, both Democrats and Republicans used to say, they'd get up at a microphone and claim they were going to replicate our system because it.
And that's the way we should go back to. We want other countries to mimic us. Other countries are doing the opposite of what we're doing. They're looking at us and they're saying, there's an example of what not to do. Absolutely. Canada jumping in here saying likely the most important point in the interview between Peterson and Poilievre. Peterson asked Poilievre directly how he plans not to be enticed into the pit of the utopian globalist delusion that seems to have enveloped so many leaders. Pierre outlines the mistakes that other conservative parties around the world have made in the past, and where they think anybody conservative is already voting for me, so they can go off and chase the ideas of my political opponents, and then everyone will love me. This is a great point. This is a fantastic point that he brings up that we have seen time and time again. Pierre Poilievre really sticking to his guns on this one and saying, no, that's not the approach that we're going to go. We're going with a Canada first approach in moving forward when he's elected as the prime minister. Obviously, he gets into the question of when that's going to happen, what are the holdups, all of that. You got to watch the interview. It is a fantastic interview. But this is where we're at in Canada right now. We're in a situation where food bank usage has surged yet again. We have 3.49 million clients being served in Canada in food banks. This is not a good sign. We're not going in the right direction. What are we getting out of this government? Well, here's another report. Again, this is just a daily thing. We just hear this daily now. Privy Council report has found that the Trudeau Liberals' Green Slush Fund made increasingly questionable decisions due to massive amounts of conflict of interest within the organization, causing over $150 million in taxpayer dollars to disappear. Just disappear. Just poof, vanished, gone. This is the way of the Liberals, and this is the way of those even the self-proclaimed socialists. Guilbeault, the guy who wants everyone to just share and not be greedy. Yeah, Guilbeault accused of siphoning $254 million into his own company. Those a private a private business. That's right. He practice what you preach. This is the classic case of champagne socialism. Keith Wilson saying, excuse me, RCMP, any update on your investigation into this matter? Now, this is no surprise that right now there's actually calls for another convoy to go to Ottawa, an election convoy. People saying, if we don't get an election, if it's not happening, we're going to go there and we're going to demand an election, and we're going to sit there until we get one. Looky here, says Sassy Gal on X. But here we are. We have even Americans commenting on this now because there's so much political pressure happening. Obviously, the Americans have made in my estimate, the right decision moving forward into their country this year. But now they're chiming in on Canada. It can't happen quick enough, says Rob Schneider. For all Canadians, here's the next leader of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, who will soon replace the free speech denying globalist tyrant. Obviously Elon Musk, who grew up in Canada, also saying great interview. But this is where we're at. And I wanted to give a little bit of commentary on this because I was quite impressed with the delivery in this interview. Jordan Peterson, great interviewer, and Pierre Poilievre giving some really good insight to what he's going to do moving forward. Now, we haven't had a party platform yet because we don't have an election happening. That platform is going to come forward as soon as an election is brought forward. But when it comes to the ideological side of things, I think Pierre Poilievre is on the right path. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you think. And of course, we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.